What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. For years now, Sony has been more and more open around bringing their first-party games over to PC. But now reports are starting to go around that they could actually be making a major pivot and back away from that completely. Why would they do that? Well, we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about something that's been plaguing the games industry and just electronics outright when it comes to the RAM shortage, but how Nintendo could be facing some serious competition even from outside of gaming for some of those materials. And Highguard, which has not gone well, obviously. We have some backstory now as to what exactly happened, especially towards, well, the end at this point, where they were laying a bunch of people off, and it's probably what you're expecting. All of that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. Guys, we're every weekday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time, going over the world of gaming news, trying to keep you up to date. So even if you don't get a notification for a video in the morning, just know there's probably still one here for you on the channel. And we're going to start today with a classic, Backyard Baseball, as we had a new trailer that was revealed and even a release timing for it, you can see. Now, this is Backyard Baseball coming July 2026, which was the video that they uploaded on YouTube. And then also it has a Steam page now, and they say it shows the opening title sequence blending 2D animation with a modern 3D reveal, paying homage to the original game as they level up into a new era. And I was never a huge Backyard Baseball person. I remember playing it at a friend's house, I think on the PS2. And look, this game's been around, this series has been around since the 90s, and originally it was on Windows or just PC. And then it kind of grew out to even where we had it on the Game Boy Advance, but it's been a bit since there was a new entry, to my understanding. I think they did like the classic 97 version of Backyard Baseball, and even a later one they had on mobile. But this seems like them really going for it for it's gonna be on PC and consoles, and we're looking in July for that one. So, hey, big news there for Backyard Baseball. I know there's a bit of a following for it, so I wanted to make sure we had it here even to lead off the show. Also, Fallout 4, which has released on the Switch 2, is getting a lot of praise when it comes to just the overall quality of the port, and it seems like Bethesda isn't done yet. And we can see, now this is over on their social media account, where they say, thank you to everyone who has jumped in to explore the Commonwealth on Switch 2. In addition to our current 60 FPS and 40 FPS modes, we'll be adding the following in an upcoming update: support for DLSS and additional stability improvements. That second one seems like something they'll be doing for, I mean, quite some time with the engine. It's okay. But DLSS, that's going to be something to see there with even like the 60 FPS mode, but certainly the 40 FPS mode. I still think that's a good middle ground when it comes to the performance mode versus the quality mode. 40 FPS, especially when you have a 120 hertz display and VRR in handheld mode, that can look pretty good in motion, and with DLSS, that being tacked on for better image quality from what you see, just again, just right in front of you. I'm curious how that's going to look, so it's something I'm going to keep an eye on here when they do push the update, because I do have Fallout 4 on the Switch too, just to see it in action. I was just very curious. So even with this DLSS update, curious to see how much that they're able to leverage and what the end result ends up being. Oh, and we did have the Marathon Server Slam launch yesterday, and people have been very interested to see how the game was going to do with SteamDB, where we do have transparent numbers as to how many people on PC are playing the game. And you can see at this time, it's sitting right around 118,000 or so players concurrently. They did hit it at a top, like a peak of 143,000 players. And I mean, that was just on a Thursday afternoon. The question will be over the weekend, say Saturday or Sunday, especially ahead of them stopping the server slam and then rolling into the launch of the game, what kind of peak concurrent numbers they see. Again, when they do launch, the game's not gonna be free. It's gonna be $40. So this is also kind of a period where they get to let people try out the game and maybe get them hooked and then go, you know what, I will spend 40, or the other side realize, this game isn't really clicking for me, so I'm gonna pass on it. So a lot of questions still going into launch, but I will say just on a Thursday with a peak at that time, 143,000, it's a good start for Marathon. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Sony and their PC ports that they have been pushing at times a year, 2 years later after its initial release on the PlayStation 5 or even PS4 at that time, to the point where it was a few months later. And this is mostly about the single player side, since we know the way that Sony is positioning live service, it's just PlayStation 5 and PC, sometimes Xbox as well with something like Marathon, or hey, look at Helldivers 2 even, because those games do require a large number of players to be online for the game to just work or even be worth it outright. But with single player games, it's a bit different. And Sony has been playing around with the idea, I thought, of maybe getting to a point where, hey, a single player game is going to release PlayStation and PC day one. They were getting close, but it seems like they may be backing away from that a bit here, and this started to really spread online yesterday from Jason Schreier, as well as a few other sources that start to throw some of their thoughts into the mix, but we can see here. Now, this popped up over on Reddit, where people were transcribing the Triple Click podcast with Jason Schreier, and he was talking about the strategy with Sony and PlayStation exclusives and PC releases, and he says, I think for them the strategy is like live service games are coming at PC, but I think the sense is getting that they're backing away from putting their exclusive console stuff, like traditional single-player stuff, on PC. Then asked, would they really close that door? He says, I do. I do, yeah. And I mean, even if they don't, I mean, we're seeing like Wolverine is coming in September. They just announced it's coming September 15th. That's not going to be on PC. That's going to be on PlayStation 5 only. Now, to follow this up, over on Reset Era, he did respond after it started to again make the round, saying, I mean, it's not speculation, but sometimes topics come up on the show before I'm quite ready to publish a story about them. More to come soon, I'm sure. Thanks for listening, Triple Click. This week's episode was a lot of fun. And then to follow up from that, Nate the Hate says Sony is shifting their PC strategy, absolutely. And I mean, from there you see Jason Schreier saying, I kind of shared some thoughts before I was ready to publish a story about them, which does kind of look like he is setting up a report around Sony. And I do wonder if that's also going to include what was going on at Bluepoint and maybe a pivot away then from Sony exploring the PC market with their PlayStation console exclusive releases. And again, people are really confused by this. Why would Sony do that when the PC side looks to be free money? And I mean, kind of, because the port job is certainly nowhere near the amount of money it costs to build these games from the ground up. And they acquired a studio, Nix's, whose specialty was PC ports, and they have gotten better over time under Sony, which is a far cry from what happened with Bluepoint, who seemed to get worse under Sony. Nix's has been, I mean, pretty good, especially recently. So why would they move away from PC ports? Well, there's a number of things I think here. So one, yes, they have been getting what you would look at as almost free revenue from PC ports, but it's not a substantial amount. I think it's more than $1 billion. But people are sizing it up compared to what Sony makes in general since they started porting PC games, and it's like 1% to 2%. So you go, okay, it's not exactly lighting up the scoreboard in terms of the amount of revenue coming in versus the whole of PlayStation. Okay. And then from there, Sony, going into the PlayStation 6 generation, does have to figure out how to sell the PlayStation 6 to people. And I mean, the way it's worked, the tried and true method, the things Nintendo, for example, still hangs their hat on, are exclusive games. Games that you figure take advantage of that hardware specifically. And with the PlayStation 6, if it does have, say, 30 gigabytes of RAM, which is something that's been thrown around, things like VRAM being kind of capped currently at 8 to even 16 at the most, just based on what we're seeing around video cards and pricing for all this stuff, Sony may feel like, oh, okay, well, are we really going to design then for the 30 gigabytes in particular on the PlayStation 6 when we also have to take into account that people on PC may have to use like a 2060 or something. And eventually they will have to compare themselves to the PlayStation 5. What I mean by that is they say right now they're making the most money ever for PlayStation compared to previous generations. And a lot of that has to do with their live service games that aren't theirs. Fortnite and Apex Legends and Genshin Impact. And that's simply because they have so many PlayStation 5 systems out in the marketplace and they are considered the default system. They just collect 30% of all of this stuff. But that does mean they have to have a lot of systems on the market. And yes, putting their games on PC does start to diminish the allure, you could say, of their console, that maybe they do want to try to get back to 150 million systems that are out there. Well, you drive people to these systems with exclusives. I know there's pushback online around exclusives. I'm a bit older, so I've always kind of looked at consoles needing exclusive games to really justify their existence. So I do get it when I see these things pop up, but I guess new age gamers now, when they really look at this, or even I would say PC gamers, don't really understand as much, and they'd rather just have everything on PC. But I do think there is a competitive nature even around exclusives. So I'm still on the side of, I get it for exclusives in the gaming space, and it actually kind of makes sense just based on the way Sony's looking at the market and their need to drive significant numbers of PlayStation 6 consoles that are only going to be tougher to get people to go out and spend money on to turn to exclusives. So I'm curious about Jason Schreier's report, and I guess we'll hear more about this in the coming weeks. Next up, let's talk about ever-increasing RAM prices and how competition behind the scenes is probably going to make it even more expensive for Nintendo. Specifically, just DRAM outright is becoming more expensive. Deals are being made all over the place, and it kind of seems like most companies are overpaying depending on their position in the market. Apple, for example, no problem paying significant amounts more for RAM. And there's an example that's actually popped up in a new report we can see. Now, this is over on Mac Rumors, who is citing Deal Site. They went through, did the translation, and gave us a nice little summary here saying, according to the report's sources, Apple recently held emergency meetings with Samsung Semiconductor Division to negotiate delivery volumes of RAM for the first half of this year. The 12GB LPDDR5X modules used in the iPhone Air and iPhone 17 Pro have already roughly doubled in price since early 2025, rising from around $30 to approximately $70. Samsung is said to have originally planned to push for a 60% price increase on LPDDR5X modules supplied to Apple. Instead, however, Samsung opened with a 100% markup as a negotiation tactic, and Apple apparently accepted it on the spot. So you would have figured Apple would have said, hold on a minute, okay, let's do 40% or 50%. And then Samsung goes, man, you're twisting our all right, you know what? Hey, 60%. And then they meet in the middle. No, Apple apparently just said, yeah, it's fine. Go ahead and double it. Now look, Apple, they have plenty of money, and they may be looking at this as a more temporary thing. Eventually, AI either gets figured out or it crashes, and then RAM prices come down, like one way or the other, sure. But not every company has the ability to just go, yeah, it's fine. This $1,100 iPhone is now $1,150, and guess what? The people who buy an iPhone or upgrade are still going to buy that iPhone. A $50 price increase for something like the Switch 2, that's going to make a lot of headlines. A $50 price increase for the iPhone 17 Pro Max or whatever, people probably won't even blink at it. And that's just the thing Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft are all trying to navigate right now, but certainly Nintendo in their current position where their system isn't even a year old and they may have to look into raising the price of the console or other things around it, such as I still think the subscription service is on the table. It's $50 a year. They probably think, well, maybe we can go up to 70 or 80 and try to make all of that work out to where we'll offset costs incurred from increased prices on RAM in our Switch 2. It's a turbulent environment right now for all these hardware manufacturers and trying to thread the needle for what people think is temporary, but man, if it's not, it's gonna be a tough, I hate to say it, but 5 to 10 years coming up. And that's just the thing. I would expect now most of the stuff you see at its current price point to just be more expensive in a year or two, just based on the current market trends, especially when you have Apple throwing around money like they are now. And then also all these AI companies that have no problem just throwing stupid amounts of money at these different DRAM manufacturers. And I mean, now we're hearing that even spinning disk drives, hard drives, are just completely sold out for like manufacturers throughout 2026. They're getting into 2027 now with contracts. So we'll see when Nintendo has to renegotiate their own terms for RAM, what numbers they're looking at, because that will certainly determine the price of the Switch 2 this time next year. Next up, let's talk about Highguard that has gone through it really since it launched like a month or so ago. I mean, this is one of those speed runs for live service games that we've seen over and over again, but now we have a bit more backstory to the situation, and this is coming way of Jason Schreier over on Bloomberg. I'll have this link down below in the sources so you can read a bit more, but I wanted to pull a few excerpts here where he says one of their plans was to set up a profit-sharing program so that if the studio did deliver another big success, everyone would benefit. Just a really good way to recruit top talent because they know, hey, look, if we actually turn something in here that does really well, we're going to make a lot of money. Says reactions from testers were mostly positive, but there may have been blind spots in the process, according to people familiar with the testing. Highguard was a complicated game to learn and was more fun when using voice chat to communicate with other players, but when they turned off the microphones, it made for a much worse experience. And, well, a lot of the people who were doing hands-on testing, they had developers right there to answer questions or explain mechanics. So if there was a problem that they're running into, it was very quick and easy to get pointed in the right direction. That's not necessarily the case for people just out there in the public trying the game out. Apparently, they did kind of pitch internally, hey, we should do some kind of a network slam, even an open beta, something just to get some feedback. And the leadership there said, nah, we're not going to do that. Anyway, of course, we do know at this time that there were a ton of layoffs, and, well, Wildlight staff were under the impression that they had enough financial runway to keep working on the game and addressing issues for at least the next few months. But at an all-hands meeting on February 11th, just 2 weeks after the game's release, the company told its employees that the studio was out of money, and most of their 100-person team would be laid off. During the meeting, management said that Tencent had pulled the studio's funding, according to people familiar with the events. Although the company didn't spell it out, staff were left with the impression that their financing was contingent upon hitting certain metrics such as retention rate, which they'd failed to even come close to achieving. As we know, the game lost 98% of its player base in a matter of a week or two. So Tencent, seeing that, goes, well, it was fun while it lasted. And fun while it lasted was really just a day or two. I mean, Highguard it had almost 100,000 people, I believe, on at the peak, and then it just spiked, completely fell off. And now it's like 1,000, 2,000 people. Even with the consoles, maybe it's 5,000 people total playing that game at any given time. And it seems obvious now. They're trying some different things. I don't know if it's ever really going to come back. And with them losing their major source of funding, seems like one of those games is just quietly going to fizzle out, and then we eventually read, hey guys, Highguard servers are shutting down, and we go, yep, it's another story of the typical live service experience. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Ecco the Dolphin. So we know that there are several Ecco the Dolphin games that are in the works. Seems like a bit of a revival for the franchise, which I think would be kind of interesting. Certainly would stand out from a lot of the games that we get announced now, and I mean, certainly at a Sega, but we had some more information that was revealed, and this is in Famitsu, and like you can see some of these page scans here. This was shared over on Reddit, and some were even going through and just translating what we're looking at here. And I think the biggest takeaway that's really, really cool, so they've only announced a Switch version at this time. Again, this is in Japan. We know the Switch, incredibly popular there. It's probably the one they thought to even mention for Famitsu. I'd be shocked if this Ecco the Dolphin, this remastering that they're doing here for this version, wasn't just on just about all systems across the board. What's cool though, 8-bit, 16-bit, and 32-bit eras in a single package, and you can do that thing where you switch between graphical styles with the press of a button, so it's all in real time. And the idea here is to allow players to experience the history of Ecco the Dolphin in real time, which is really cool. The title is Ecco Complete, is what they're saying. And I think that's an awesome idea. So at 8-bit, 16-bit, 32, like they even mentioned the PC version of Ecco the Dolphin. That is a throwback. But I'm really excited for, as weird as it sounds now, but Ecco the Dolphin, just to see what strange ideas they have. Hopefully some unique gameplay elements for the brand new version of Ecco the Dolphin. This should be the standard Ecco the Dolphin that we played decades ago now. But again, I like the idea of jumping between these generations to show off Ecco the Dolphin, and I'd play back through it just for fun. I mean, the game itself was weird back in the day, and I feel like it was one of those games that many people rented and didn't get very far in because there were some obtuse things you had to do and just kind of learn yourself, especially if you didn't have the manual. If you had the manual, you would at least had a shot at it because you could read some of the things you had to do. If you just got it from Blockbuster and it was just the cartridge, yeah, you were probably just swimming in circles and really had no idea where to go. But it was different from everything else on the market, and you know what? It still would be when it comes back, or when it does come back here pretty soon. So that I like that they're trying some interesting things here. The real-time jumping between generations should be a lot of fun to see. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, have you played an Ecco the Dolphin game before? Okay, 53% say no, 47% say yes. That's not bad, all right? For a franchise that's been on the shelf for a while, we'll say. I mean, we had, what, a PS2 version of the game? I don't even really remember that one much, but even so, you got to go back to really the Genesis maybe the Dreamcast, for when people really remember Ecco the Dolphin existing. So the fact that it is just about 50-50 here, not bad. And I'll be curious to see if it does make waves when the new version comes out, but certainly even this remastering project that they're talking about, to see how many people really remember it and go, oh, okay, Ecco the Dolphin, yeah, I'll give that one a try. And wait, you can change between these different graphics. That's kind of neat. I hope this is a franchise that does see a successful revival with Sega, but only time can tell on that one. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from the dad, who says, wow, that pitch list that got shot down really is rage-inducing. So here's my thing with the list of pitched games. I mean, there are a lot of, obviously, fan favorites there that people want to see come back. It does kind of read like a bit wish listy, so that's one of the reasons that I would like to see more corroboration around some of those pitched projects. I can tell you, though, I have had more corroboration around Bloodborne, at least being pitched by Bluepoint. I don't know if it was pitched twice, but it was definitely pitched once to my understanding. And I just think there's more holding that project up than just the ability for Bluepoint. Can they do it or not? I'm sure they can. They did Demon's Souls, and again, I know there's like hardcore fan base that was like, they messed this up, they messed this up. I think by and large, they did a pretty good job on Demon's Souls, and I think they would do a pretty good job on, I think they would have done a pretty good job on Bloodborne. Unfortunately, doesn't seem like something we'll ever really find out, because I think there's a lot more that's holding that up between Sony, FromSoft, and I think some of the creators for it. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card, or maybe you want to hear some of my thoughts on Pokemon Day. It hasn't happened yet, but you know what? I will be doing a video on that later on today, just some reaction going over it, and I'll leave that video right below when I do have it out. Thanks, guys, for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave.